In the quiet of a rain-soaked night, Jesus gathered his weary disciples and through the story of a broken prophet, revealed the hidden strength and vulnerability, the healing power of tears, and the courage found in faith unclouded by certainty. Together they would face the storm, knowing that, like rain, trials cleanse and prepare the soul for purpose. The sun dipped low in the sky as Jesus and his disciples journeyed toward Galilee. Each step stirred the dry earth, and a cloud of dust rose around their worn sandals. Alongside the road, people gathered, whispering about the miracles they had heard of and the man who claimed to bring hope in the face of a world often filled with despair. As Jesus walked ahead, a calm presence among the restless crowd, his disciples followed closely behind. Peter, with his broad shoulders and confident stride, felt the eyes of the people on him as though they too expected greatness. But in his heart, Peter questioned his strength. Could he really live up to the responsibility Jesus seemed to see in him? Each step felt heavier, his inner conflict hidden behind a mask of pride and duty. James and John walked side by side, discussing the miracles they'd witnessed. The blind man's open eyes, the sick who found strength in their limbs, the broken who walked again. For John, Jesus was more than a teacher. He was a friend, a brother, a guide. But John also carried a hidden fear. The weight of his family's expectations loomed over him, casting doubt on his choice to follow Jesus. Thomas trailed behind, lost in his thoughts. Doubt had always been his closest companion, and despite seeing countless miracles, his heart wrestled with questions he could not quiet. Can any of this be real? He murmured to himself, unaware that Jesus, though walking ahead, seemed to sense his uncertainty. They walked until the sun began to disappear beyond the hills, and the air grew cooler. Jesus stopped and turned, his gaze sweeping over the group with a gentle warmth. "Let's rest here," he said, leading them off the road to a hillside where they could gather in peace, away from the crowds. The disciples settled in a circle, the dust of the road still clinging to their robes. The sky overhead darkened as clouds formed in layers, hinting at the possibility of rain. The cool breeze seemed to carry with it the tension of unspoken thoughts and emotions, making the disciples feel both exposed and comforted in Jesus' presence. Peter sat close to Jesus, his usually brash demeanor softened as he looked out over the valley below. He admired Jesus' calmness, his unwavering faith, and his patience with each of them, even when they faltered. Peter admired it, but doubted he could ever possess it. His mind drifted to moments when he'd questioned his own actions, times when his temper had gotten the better of him. The title of the rock felt like a burden. Jesus glanced at Peter, his eyes kind but discerning, as though he knew the doubts that weighed on Peter's heart. "The journey we're on is not an easy one," Jesus began, addressing them all. "But it is one that will shape you, refine you, and bring you closer to understanding." A rumble of thunder echoed in the distance, and the disciples exchanged glances, feeling both the physical and emotional tension of the moment. As the sky darkened further, Jesus began to share a story. His voice was soft yet carried strength, each word painting a picture that drew the disciples into a world of struggle and hope. "There was once a man named Elijah," he began, "a man called by God yet burdened with sorrow. He had walked the path of faith, but his heart was weighed down by loss and loneliness. One night, weary and questioning, Elijah wandered into the wilderness, far from anyone who could comfort him. The disciples listened intently, the sound of Jesus' voice blending with the rustling leaves and the distant rumble of thunder. For each of them, Elijah's story mirrored their own struggles, and as Jesus continued, they felt their hearts resonate with the prophet's pain. "Elijah climbed to the top of a hill," Jesus continued, "and there, alone under the vast sky, he poured out his sorrow to God. His tears fell as freely as the rain, each one carrying a piece of his pain, his uncertainty, his fear. The first drops of rain began to fall, soft and cool against the disciples' skin, as if the heavens themselves were moved by Elijah's story. For a moment no one spoke. They simply listened, letting the rain blend with Jesus' words and their own unspoken fears. As the rain grew heavier, Peter felt his heart pounding. Elijah's story struck a deep chord, stirring feelings he hadn't allowed himself to confront. He thought about his own doubts, his fears of not living up to the role Jesus had given him. He wanted to be strong, to be the rock that Jesus saw him as, but his heart was filled with questions he couldn't silence. "Rabbi," Peter finally said, his voice barely audible, "why does it feel like those closest to you suffer the most?" Jesus turned to Peter, his gaze filled with understanding. "Peter, when a craftsman shapes his creation, he applies pressure, molds it, refines it. You are being shaped, not because you are weak but because you are called to be strong." Peter felt a shiver run down his spine. The words touched something deep within him, but they also revealed the weight of the path he had chosen. He nodded slowly, feeling both the burden and the blessing of his role. John, sitting close to Peter, found himself reflecting on his own life, his family, and the expectations he carried. He had always been known for his gentle spirit, his compassion, but there were moments when he questioned if that was enough. Could he, with his soft heart, truly stand beside Jesus in the trials to come? Jesus seemed to sense John's sorrow and placed a hand on his shoulder. "John, your heart is a gift. It is your compassion that will be your strength, not a weakness. Love is not measured by deeds alone but by the spirit with which they are done." A few tears escaped down John's cheeks, mixing with the rain. He looked at Jesus, feeling a sense of acceptance and peace that he hadn't known before. He no longer needed to prove himself, he only needed to be himself. Thomas had always been skeptical by nature, his mind quick to question and slow to accept. As he listened to the story of Elijah, he felt his doubts surge, his heart conflicted. He longed to believe fully but was held back by a need for answers, for certainty. "Teacher," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion, "what if I'm not strong enough to believe without seeing?" Jesus looked at Thomas with a gentle smile. "Thomas, faith is not the absence of questions. It is the courage to seek answers without fear. Your doubts are a part of your journey. They are not a weakness but a sign that you are seeking truth." For the first time, Thomas felt a flicker of hope. His doubts did not make him unworthy, they were a part of his journey, a path to understanding. The rain fell more steadily, and the disciples found themselves lost in reflection, each one feeling a deep release as they confronted their fears and uncertainties. Jesus continued, speaking of Elijah's tears and the way they had blended with the rain, cleansing him in ways words could not. "Tears," Jesus said softly, "are not a sign of weakness. They are the language of the heart, the way we release the burdens we cannot carry alone." The disciples sat in silence, each one allowing their own sorrow to flow, feeling the healing power of the rain as it washed over them. For the first time, they understood that their tears were not something to hide but a gift, a part of their healing. The storm reached its peak, the rain pouring down as the disciples huddled together, feeling both vulnerable and renewed. They had shared their deepest fears, their doubts, and now they felt a sense of unity that went beyond words. Peter felt a newfound strength, a willingness to embrace his weaknesses as part of his journey. John felt a softness in his heart, a compassion that would guide him. And Thomas, though still full of questions, felt a peace within him, a willingness to trust the unknown. They sat in silence, each one changed by the experience, feeling a sense of renewal that only comes after facing the depths of one's own soul. As the rain subsided, a deep calm settled over the hillside. The disciples looked at one another, each one feeling a sense of solidarity and understanding. They had shared something sacred, a moment of vulnerability that had bound them together in ways words could not capture. Jesus watched them, his heart filled with love and pride. He knew that their journey would be difficult, but he also knew that they were ready, strengthened by the cleansing rain and their shared experiences. "You are prepared," he said softly, his voice filled with compassion. "The rain has washed away the fears that held you back. You are ready for the path ahead." As dawn approached, the first light spread across the hillside, casting a warm glow over the disciples. Jesus gathered them close, offering a final message that would stay with them long after he was gone. "Remember," he said, "the rain that falls is both a gift and a reminder. Just as it cleanses the earth, so do your trials cleanse your soul. Embrace them, for they prepare you for the joy, the purpose that awaits." The disciples looked at one another, feeling a joy that could not be explained. They knew they were part of something greater, a journey that would change them and the world. As they descended the hillside, each one carried with them the lesson of the rain, A lesson of healing, of renewal, and of the strength found in vulnerability. They walked together, united by a shared purpose, ready to face whatever lay ahead. This is end of the story. Comment amen if you believe in Jesus' blessings. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.